Hello and welcome to the first session of Karen's Colours for 2026. This is going to be one of those monthly colour forecasts, but before embarking on a reading for January 2026, I'd like to remind us all that this is a traditional time to review the past year before setting out our goals and resolutions for the upcoming year. If you've already done those resolutions, then maybe you might like to consider them in the light of what I present today. We're going to be examining the progress made, the setbacks encountered, the challenges that we've overcome, and the work that has been left undone. But before we begin, thank you once again for attending this session. I know that there are not many of you that do so, but I'm certainly hoping that those of you who do will get something positive out of these readings. The reading itself is going to be rather truncated because I'll spend most of the time looking at 2025 in review. We're going to be examining the colours of the main skills and experiences that you've had, the colours of the primary blockages or deficits that have afflicted you throughout the year. And the review will encourage you to think where you're going to go next. There'll be creation of New Year's resolutions that are involved, but those, of course, are very personal to you. And of course, because we make New Year's resolutions, there are lots of goals to be set, lots of ideas about where we want to go next. There is an importance in reviewing past experience so that we can create a future path. And that future path will be denoted by one colour card for January 26. And I'm going to also give you an oracle card to help guide the way. But otherwise, the reading will be extremely truncated. Certainly, enjoy. So let's now embark upon the experiences that have come through for January people throughout the year 2025. If we look at the colours that came out, we note that the most prominent one for February 2025, which is when I started these readings, was for changes and new beginnings. The colour that is predominant is green. By March, that had changed into some hard work and fairly reduced mobility because the colours had gone to brown, black, and cyan. By April, there was a lot of neediness and struggle, where pink and orange tended to dominate, and in May, that struggle continued, but this time it was accompanied by communication and the lack of ability to move around. So you were stuck for a little while. That was encompassed by blue, cyan, and orange. By June, there was a massive disruption that took place, and that disruption was caused by a bit of a shock, or the shock may have caused the disruption. I'm not exactly sure which, but definitely purple and white predominated throughout that month. By July, that shock had worn off. The disruption had now turned into a struggle against some sort of calamity. And by August, there was a complete withdrawal from engagement, signified by the predominance of the colour black. By September, there was a desire to fix things, to get better, to heal whatever it was that had caused that disruption and shock earlier in the year. And that was denoted by a preponderance of the colour purple. By October, you'd realise that there was no way you could do this all on your own, and so you had to accept assistance, denoted by the colour pink. In November, you realised that there was a number of alternatives that you could follow, and this is denoted by white and grey. And now in December, you've decided that compassion and forgiveness is the way to travel. So altogether, looking at all of those colours, we've discovered that the most predominant ones for the entire year, from February through to December, were green, orange, and pink. The most common one was green, which appeared 12 times, and it denoted freedom, growth, and values that needed to be examined. Coming in at 11 times was orange, which showed out that there was crisis, but you also displayed a great deal of courage and confidence in whatever it is that you needed to do. And thirdly, in came the color pink at 10 times. This was all about surrender, vulnerability, and love. Were you able to swing from the approach to freedom to simply allowing whatever it was to be, to surrender to the inevitable? Looking at the colors that were missing, in February, you had a number of different colors which started off the accumulation of other colors that were missing. By March, the colors that tended to predominate were red, blue, gray, and purple. By April, the blue and purple had dropped off and you ended up with red and gray. From March to June to July to August and September, gray continued to predominate. So uncertainty was a feature of those months, things that you were not prepared to deal with. By October, you'd actually introduced red and yellow. And even though the grey still remained there, the red and yellow tended to suggest that there were things that you needed to do and things that you needed to think about. Did you actually do those? In November, the grey had dropped out and instead red and yellow tended to predominate. But by the end of the year, yellow was the one colour that remained. So the overall messages about what you were avoiding were encapsulated within the colour yellow. There was excitement and happiness you were missing out on. There was anxiety and hypervigilance that you were trying to avoid, and that, of course, affected your memory and your learning capacities. So the overall message for January people for 2025 was that although you chose to be courageous in the face of vulnerability, you were nevertheless challenged by an inability to remember past lessons. So let's now see where you might go in the future. Now, the Oracle cards, the deck that I've chosen for this particular session, consist of a series of cards that give you meditation guidelines. And this is from James Van Praagh, and it's called The Soul's Journey. So let's now look for a single card to give us an idea of what direction January people need to take in order to travel safely through 2026. And the card is white on pink. This is one that is associated with justice. It's doing the right thing and getting the right sorts of responses, the right sorts of outcomes. Pink internally requires you to maintain that vulnerability that is so important to keeping us loving and caring and kind. But in the real world, you need to face up to the fact that things happen, and they happen outside of your own control, and so you just need to let it happen. And in doing so, the outcomes will always be of benefit to you. So let's now choose the card in that deck. And what we have here is pride. Repeat to yourself on a daily basis, I love myself and I see myself in everyone. Something that goes very well with the Justice card. Well, I hope you've received something positive out of that annual review and have taken on board the small colour reading and affirmation as a guide towards 2026. Certainly, looking at these readings from an annual perspective, a retrospective, I've come across a number of insights, both for myself, but also on behalf of those people that I know that have birthdays in the various months that I have been reading for. And one of the things that's come up here is whether or not I would even bother to continue with these. I feel hopeful that I should. I also feel as though I need to make some alterations. If you can think of suggestions that might make these more user-friendly, if you've been following the readings at all, you might even find that there's something in them that you might like to comment about. And I'd really appreciate those comments, because right now I'm in a dilemma, which is why I haven't actually done a full reading for every month, for every birthday month for January. It all depends on the results of this reading as to whether or not I continue. I have a lot to contemplate. My black is quite prominent too. Anyway, if you're new here and you haven't actually seen these before, you might think they're a bit confusing. That's part and parcel of a colour reading. It's something that most people will never have experienced. So I wish you all the best for 2026, and hopefully we'll meet again for more colour readings. If not, plenty of other things I can talk about that have to do with colour. Until next time, bye.